Good morning, everyone. Sorry I'm getting started a little bit late today, but you know how things can go. So, nevertheless, I wanted to get in today's day text so that we could keep moving forward with the letter of 1 John and also give some updates about this weekend shows. So, I'm glad for those of you who are still here or who are just joining us, or even if you're just watching this video later. In any case, we try to do our day texts every weekday morning and Saturday morning between 5:30 and 6:30 AM Pacific Standard Time. Sometimes that changes a little. So, if you're a subscriber, you will see the live notice and be alerted. And so, in any case, we work our way through the biblical texts, and sometimes we also consider other related histories and texts. But our primary focus is in the God Jah. So that's why we focus on the biblical books and texts, as well as the events that are otherwise documented by history, archaeology, and other, as I said, related histories and texts that tell us about some of the same things. So we're in the letter of 1 John. John is one of Jesus' earliest and most beloved disciples, or students. The word disciple means basically student. So when Jesus was here and he taught, he had a group of students. And John was considered the most beloved or closest to him. So he wrote a history about the things that Jesus did and taught, as well as at least 3 letters that are just before the book of Revelation in most biblical texts or biblical versions that group the biblical texts. So, good morning to everyone who's joining us. And then, of course, we also believe that John received the revelation while he was imprisoned, or otherwise wrote it near the end of his life, which he received, according to what he said or wrote, from Jesus, the one that he actually lived and associated with while Jesus was on earth. But of course, in the view of Christians, Jesus was more than just a man. We believe he was sent by God from heaven. And that's why we refer to him as the Son of God, as the one who was firstborn by God the Father. And so, in the same way that humans beget other humans, the begotten human doesn't inherit the longevity of the parents. The parents are always the parents. The son or daughter may come from the parents, but it is a separate individual, younger than the parents, obviously, and one who learns from both parents until old enough to act on their own. We are made in their image, according to Genesis 1, and so everything we do and see around us is in some way based on what the spirits who made us also use or do. It's just metaphysical or outside of what we see, so that we can't fully describe or experience it the way we do the things that are made for us, but that are like what they use in some other way beyond our existence. So, but these things are told to us about God being a father, Jesus being a son or the firstborn, because those terms have meaning to us. We use them. We understand them. They're not foreign. People have children no matter what your race. So those terms are universal when it comes to human beings and how we use and understand them. There's not a lot of cultural difference in the sense in which we understand our children being born from us. Now, there may be different ideas and thoughts involved with the birthing process, and people have different religious views of how children are formed. But I'm talking about what we can observe from the birth, that the child is born from the mother as a result of the father and the mother. And so these are the same terms used in the Bible to describe relationships like that between Jesus and God the Father. So we're going to read some of those terms in today's text. We're reading 1 John 4, 7 through 11. Keep in mind what I just said about how there's really a universal sense in which we as humans understand children and parents and their relationship and their differences. Keep that in mind as we read verses 7 through 11 of 1 John chapter 4 so that you can appreciate more the kinds of things we don't directly experience in the metaphysical plane, but that we know are similar to what we experience because we're made in their image, according to those in the metaphysical plane. 1 John chapter 4, verse 7. Dearly loved ones, we should love each other because love is from God. Each person who shows love to others has been born from God and has come to know God. Verse 8. The one who does not show love to others has not come to know God, because God is love. Let me stop here for a moment before we go on with the rest of the reading. This is a fairly well-known verse, or at least part of it. God is love. Even people who don't necessarily believe in the Christian God use that text because they have a different concept of love in a way that allows them to use it and accept it as part of their practice. But what is love? Right? Would love involve abuse, pain, causing pain to somebody else? I'm not talking about a momentary weakness, of course, which we all experience, but I'm talking about as a practice. Does it seem like love involves a practice of abuse and pain? So when these people, when anyone really, us, or when these people that I mentioned in terms of they're not really Christian, but they use these terms like love or God is love, well, what are they doing? What is their practice? What is their fruit? What are they showing? Is there abuse and pain? Because the relationships that are promoted today, like homosexuality, are abusive and often involve pain and death and disease. All the things that you will not find in a normal heterosexual relationship based on their sexual physiology and attraction, because in homosexuality, the relationships promoted today, and pedo is coming, it's becoming more and more discussed and accepted. And so, how can that be love? Just because you're attracted to someone and you want to have a sexual experience with that thing does not mean you love it. It just means you have a selfish passion for it that you want to enact, possibly regardless of whether the object responds the way you do. And that's why I say selfish. So if the object doesn't respond and you respect that, then maybe it's not so much of a selfish passion toward that object, which is often the case with sinful people who are trying to be Christian, right? Because, well, withhold, even heterosexuals, I may be attracted to many women, but I don't, pursue that to the point of having sex with every woman I'm attracted to. I can manage it to an extent. And so everyone can do that, no matter who you are, even if you at times also cannot or don't. Now, in a heterosexual relationship, you can satisfy that desire in a way that isn't going to be damaging to you. Homosexuality, you can't do that because you will be damaging that person, because that person is a gender and a physiology that's designed or even evolved. Let's just set that aside for a moment, because the physiology is clear. It's not going to change whether you've been designed or evolved, because it responds to the opposite gender, both emotionally and physiologically. And the result is children. Whereas in homosexual relationships, again, what is promoted today as a good thing, as love, causes death, pain, disease, and suffering, and doesn't bring forth children, is one of the most difficult types of relationships to maintain. Causes confusion because, the people involved have a gender and a physiology. And one or the other are confused, or both, about their role in that relationship based on how they're made. The confusion results from the fact that they're misusing their physiology. So we can't get into their head so much and say, well, you're misusing your brain. We can say you're misusing your rear end. That's obvious. Or your other organs and things, because they have a specific design, physiologically, scientifically. We believe by design, but even if you say evolution, then it doesn't make any difference. It's still the same physiology. And it still responds to the opposite gender in the ways that it's made to or has come to respond to best. And it's not just so much that, homosexuality is just like a step below. It's damaging. See, that's why I bring it up in association with love. If it's such a loving relationship, if not promoting homosexuality isn't loving, like if I'm not loving because I don't promote it, well, how is that possible if what I'm not promoting is abusive and painful and damages one or both parties involved? I think it's obvious that we have good reasons for not promoting something when it's abusive and damaging to one or both participants. If it's just something you do to yourself, well, that's you answer for that. But when it involves another person, that's different. Now you're treating someone else in a certain way that has to be measured against you in order to determine if that's really what you would want. And in a homosexual relationship it is, and so that's fine, and they get to have it. People can have what they want. But what you're going to have is abuse. It's a fact, either physically or otherwise. So if you've emotionally or spiritually accepted it, and it doesn't damage you in those ways, even though I would argue it probably will, but you're you, so I'm going to leave that to you. But I can see what your physiology has become because of what you do. So this is not something you can hide. Death, disease, they show themselves on the outside and the inside. So why would you pick a relationship that clearly is not loving in the ways that love is meant to be? And that is by treating each other the way you want to be treated. Because I don't think any of us want to be abused and have pain, an early death, disease, and all the other stuff. So you can look up for yourself the consequences of homosexual sex. I have a link on my topical index at Elihu Books, as well as the consequences of polygamous heterosexual sex, that is with multiple women, and you're not protected in ways where, again, you don't know who they're with, or if you're a woman with multiple men, same thing. You can have more than one partner in some sense, biblically, but look at how difficult it is to have even one today. And how many quality partners can you really expect to find in a way that you could manage and actually get the things that you're trying to find and maintain? It's difficult enough, it seems to me, in one, but we don't speak culturally for everything. The Bible speaks specifically in limited ways regarding wives for overseers. But again, those were different days as well. And if if somebody's able to find this great supply of wives, if you're a man, let us know, us men. Of course, we're not all looking necessarily for wives. But I will say this, it's not easy. Even though I don't necessarily look all the time, I still don't see that many that would qualify just in the basic sense of having a sense of what's right or trying to do good, regardless of how many times you fail. That's really what stands out to me, or I look for, at least in a Christian sense, right? Because that's what you need. You can find a woman, or if you're a woman, you can find a man anywhere. But what do you need? I mean, if you get in a relationship with someone and they can't give you what you need, at least in the basic sense, or at least you each complement each other in the ways that we were meant to, well, how is that going to work? It's not. That's when you follow Paul's advice and you just stay single and do your best. If you're in a relationship, you keep going. It's just that homosexuals are going to have the toughest time, and the statistics show they do. So that's why I question it with respect to love. I really do. To me, it's abuse. And they may feel good about the abuse, just like a woman who abuses her unborn child when she aborts it. Doesn't change the fact you're aborting a child who's going to be born and is a baby just by looking at the ultrasound. So maybe having protected sex, I'm not talking about people who were forcibly raped or anything. Those are a little bit different circumstances. Still the same, right? Still a baby. but the circumstances are different. So my point is, for those who are just flagrantly allowing themselves to get pregnant, are you showing love? It doesn't seem like you are. Just because you're having a lot of sex and getting pregnant, that's not love, that's passion. And it's actually not loving to allow yourself to be so passionate that the consequence is actually killing a child because you were so unprepared and irresponsible that you didn't step up and just raise the child. That's what you're supposed to do. If you're going to have the sex, you raise the child. Of course, I'm not going to speak for everyone. You speak for you. I'm just telling you what I would do and what I see as love. And when I talk about God as love, I'm not talking about the way that people who do those things refer to love. I don't see those things as love because their consequence is not loving. And it, in fact, is damaging, either to the other partner in the relationship, if homosexual, or to the unborn, or in today's laws, in some places, even a born child, if the mother aborts it or kills it. So let's move on with the text. Verses 9 through 11. In this, the love of God was revealed among us. Okay, so I isolated that just so we could talk a little bit about love in a couple specific ways and relationships and between mothers and children on some level. And then how people who don't show that kind of love really don't know God, because God is love. And how that's often used even by people in Hollywood and elsewhere. But it's really just something they try to label over their unloving actions. In any case, the love of God was revealed among us, verse 9, in that God sent forth his uniquely begotten Son into the world in order that we might live through him. Remember what I said about son and firstborn, only begotten, uniquely begotten. The term is monogenes, and so it basically means or involves a unique generation, because it's the only one. It's the only begotten. But because it's used also in ways in the Bible, like with Abraham and his children, whereas he had more than one, it speaks of Isaac as his only begotten son in the unique sense that he was born from Sarah at an advanced age. In the same way, Jah has other sons who are referred to throughout the Bible, in Genesis, in Psalms, and in other texts, like in Deuteronomy. The sons of God are regularly referred to in Job. Jesus refers to the sons of God when he quotes Psalm 82 and John 10. But Jesus is unique in that he is the firstborn from God. And firstborn, according to Deuteronomy 21:17, means, this isn't something we really have to define outside of the scriptures, or it's consistent as well as with our actual use of the term. And that is the one born first, the beginning of one's generative power. That's what Deuteronomy 21:17 says. So, Jesus is the beginning of the Father's generative power, the firstborn, the uniquely begotten, because through him, the scriptures say, everything else was made. Everything else in the sense that it was a through him thing, not the firstborn himself, whom God made. And Proverbs 8 gives us a great description of all of those same things, just like other texts, Colossians 1, Hebrews 1, John 1, all of them are referring to the same things. Genesis 1. These are the accounts that describe God's creation with the Son and the other angels, but through Jesus exclusively, in that he used him to put all things together that he made, just like a carpenter's son, the very role Jesus had when he was on earth. Okay, so let's finish the reading. Verses 10 and 11. By this action, the love shown is not because we have loved God. Rather, it is because he loved us, and he sent forth his Son as a merciful atonement in view of our wrongdoings. Verse 11, dearly loved ones, if in this manner God loved us, then we are obligated to love each other. So here John makes the point that it's Jah responding to the condition of humanity back in the Garden of Eden when he gave the prophecy of the seed that would solve these things. The Son he would send after preparing a body for him to allow him to go through the things he would need to do in order to redeem us. The last Adam, 1 Corinthians 15:45. And that's the merciful atonement that he gave to Jah, the sacrifice of his body that was killed for no reason, because Satan and the other sons of God who were against Jah tried to break him down. But they couldn't do it. And he stayed true to his father Jah and showed that they were all liars, because that's what they should have been doing and helping us to do. And that's what he did, right? The other sons of God who came before the flood and Satan himself did what? They hurt humanity. They misled humanity. They used us for their own glory and satisfaction, whomever they chose. Jesus came, didn't choose any wife, and gave himself to us exclusively, all the way to death, even though he did nothing wrong. And for that reason, God gave him the name that is above every name. Not because Jesus is the Father, Jah, but to the glory of the Father, Jah. And in that way, Jesus is Jah. Just like every single one of us can be like God when we do the things that God told us to do. And that's exactly what Jesus said he did. John 7:16-17 and 12:49 through 50. So the more we try to be like God or like Jesus, that's like reaching the height of existence. Can you get higher or better than being like God? We're not talking about who is like God in Michael's name sense in terms of trying to rival him. That's the opposite way. That's what the false gods do. The real sons of God, and of course Jesus most of all, and us too to the extent we're able to now, are basically saying we want to be like God, right? Not to rival him, but because we think he's right. We believe he's the true light. And we want to be lights. We want to reflect that light. We're not trying to steal that light and then take it away from Jah. No, we're trying to give it to him. And he allows us to reflect and beam that same light. We're the light of the world, just like Jesus. That's what I'm talking about. That's the... You can't get any better, right? If you could exist in a better way than Jah, what would it be? There is no other better way to be. And that's why Jesus only does what Jah tells him to do or does. Because he already knows. It's not like there's some other answer or way out there that the Father doesn't know and he's just not telling us. Every way that Jah knows and shows us is the right way. He's not showing us the wrong ways. That's what the devil does. Is it really so? Yes, it's really so. God said so, and he hasn't done anything wrong to make it otherwise. And you haven't done anything but come here now and tell me God lies? That's what she should have said. Of course, it's easier to look back now. We understand that. So let's look forward instead. And if you're faced with that same question, you keep that answer in your head. And then we'll start turning things around. So I thank you all for joining me. Good text. We covered some good material. We'll be back tomorrow for another day text, Saturday. Keep working our way through John. Got some good text coming up in the rest of this 4th chapter and then chapter 5. A lot of good stuff. And then Sunday, we're going to continue our series, CW Jah Talk number 19. We're going to talk about the pre-Christian evidence pointing to Jesus as the biblical Messiah from the book of Psalms. We may have to do multiple parts in the book of Psalms, but we're going to start our review of the material from the book of Psalms and use it to show that it contains additional material that could be used before Jesus was born, or that was in existence before he was born, and so can be used to show that the things he did or that are written about him are consistent with what people believed before he ever did them. And so we consider that the best evidence to show whether or not these things were really true, or at least that Jesus is the one that these things were written about, because the events that occurred could no longer be fulfilled the way they could back then. So I hope you'll all join me this Sunday for that show, for tomorrow's show as well. I may have some other videos that I'll get up, but I have some work to do as well today. But we'll just keep going. We'll get through these texts. We'll keep presenting the information that highlights Jesus as the biblical Messiah. And I hope you will all have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend. I'll see you